Did the Trump administration willfully ignore a court order? That is the question that federal judge James Boasberg was trying to get the answer to today during a confrontational, intense hearing, where he grilled a Justice Department attorney over the administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act to send hundreds of Venezuelan nationals to El Salvador with little to no due process, even after the judge ordered those flights to be halted. Judge Boasberg did not issue any rulings from the bench today, but appears likely to find probable cause that the administration violated his orders. He even said he is weighing contempt proceedings, telling the DOJ attorney that he believes the Trump administration acted in bad faith, and saying, if you really believed everything you did that day was legal and could survive a court challenge, I can't believe you ever would have operated in the way you did. Joining me now is Andrea Flores, VP of Immigration Policy and Campaigns at Forward.us, and Alan Orr, former president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Andrea, the question at the heart of this hearing was whether the Trump administration defied Judge Boasberg's orders. Did we gain clarity on that core question of defiance?
Facts seem pretty clear that the administration had both an opportunity to stop those flights, turn around those flights, and that they issued this proclamation, the Alien Enemies Act, which should not ever be issued, is not necessary for any national security, foreign policy, or public safety reason to have been invoked. They were selecting people for removal to El Salvador before those flights took off, and during that time that the judge was issuing that order, they knew that there were individuals subject to that authority on that plane, and it is not unusual for ICE to turn around planes. They actually returned some people in those, like the 24-hour period after that order came down. So the facts do not look to be favorable to the side of the government, and it is highly unusual that ICE has not already corrected these errors.
Okay, and I want to get to that point, Alan, in just a minute, what this is going to look like to correct this error. But one of the things that I thought was absolutely fascinating today that we learned was that the Deputy Assistant Attorney General for Immigration, Drew Ensign, was apparently walled off from operational details on these flights, even the identities on the decision makers on this operation. He repeatedly told the judge he did not know the answers to his questions, that the information he was being asked to provide was protected by attorney-client privilege. When the attorney who's in charge of supervising an operation is not privy to the core details of that operation, and let's just take it at face value that he is telling the truth, what does that tell you?
It tells me that the math is not mathing, right? So, and that's why they don't want to show their work, because it's quite clear that they did not follow their own procedures. I don't work in aviation, but I did see Top Gun, and I know that there are things and procedures that take place to remove a plane from the United States, and specifically 3 of them. So it is a clear indication that they didn't follow the rules. In addition to that, it was a production. They had a show that they wanted to put on, that they were removing these gang members, and they wanted to be on the ground to have them coming off the plane and going into the prison to sort of feed their narrative. So all of that stuff shows the bad faith and why they don't want to show their work and exactly how this happened.
Alan, Judge Boasberg said he would issue an opinion no earlier than next week, warned that if he finds probable cause for contempt, his order will outline next steps. If the judge chooses to schedule contempt hearings, what then does it look like? And it seems to me to be a question of who is it that he chooses to hold responsible?
I think that is very clear, that who he chooses to hold responsible, and maybe the whole government. But I think it also opens a lot of civil actions for many of the individuals that were removed who had cause. I mean, I think if it was a clear removal and they just were in violation of the judge's order, that would be one thing. But so many people were removed in these flights that should not have been removed against other judicial orders, some of them by their own department, that they were removing from the United States. So that's what sort of brings the problem. I think the judge has been very lenient on them and given them weeks to sort of say, do you really not want to tell me? And this is part of the trick or the game that the Trump administration is playing with the Justice Department right now, just saying, how close can they get to the line without actually crossing it?
Andrea, the reason that I find this all so interesting is because there's a duality here, right? This is about the fact that you have a government who it would seem to be is acting in defiance of court orders, right? So on one hand, this is about rule of law. And on the other hand, this is about immigration and the way that they intend to handle immigration inside this country. You brought this up, and I've been thinking about this nonstop. Just these Venezuelan nationals, right, who were accused of being gang members with no actual proof that they were gang members, who were not sent back to Venezuela, they're sent to El Salvador. What does restitution look like for them and for their families, some of whom are American citizens?
Restitution is an incredibly important conversation to be having, and yet we're seeing, thought leaders like Joe Rogan call for the return of these individuals as opposed to our congressional leaders. So I think a lot of people aren't sure what can be done, but actually the Department of Homeland Security once again can bring people back when they are mistakenly removed. It has happened before, and it is a lie from this administration if they say they cannot return these people back to the United States, because they made a contract with El Salvador. They are paying our tax dollars to keep those Venezuelan nationals detained in the El Salvadorian prison. So that means that if they can go and film in that facility, if they can send administration officials and press, there is no reason why they cannot return anyone who was wrongfully removed. And they have admitted that the process through which they identified who they were removing under this act had to do with tattoo identification, having to do with simply being Venezuelan. Every American, this is not just an immigration issue. Every American should be terrified of what was done under the Alien Enemies Act, because the last time it was used in our history, it was used to detain United States citizens. The way the Department of Homeland Security is conducting these flights suggests that it is just a matter of time before they send a U.S. citizen to this El Salvadorian prison. And will their answer then be, we cannot get them back? And so it's really important that people understand they are picking these difficult immigration issues to test our Constitution, to test wartime powers, and our immigration laws provide every tool that this country needs to remove an individual who may be a threat to public safety or national security. So they are being dishonest with the public, and every lawmaker should be calling that out. And it's very concerning. We're seeing the National Review say they're violating due process. We're saying other conservative thought leaders say our immigration laws actually provide a deportation process that makes sense for a reason to avoid what we are seeing. So one, Congress needs to act, and every American needs to be acting in right now to ensure that they are not next to be returned to a foreign country, and for their government to say there's no way to get them back.
Alan, they are not affording these people due process, and they are being opaque by design. There was also a hearing today in the case of Rumeysa Öztürk, as you know, the tough student from Turkey who was apprehended on the street by immigration authorities, taken to a detention center in Louisiana. Her lawyers are saying she should be returned to Massachusetts. What is the justification for keeping her in Louisiana, Alan?
Yeah, so it's expensive. So there is no real justification for that. She's not a threat to leave under any circumstance. She hasn't, even the university today came out behind her and sort of said, this doesn't make sense about some piece of article that she wrote many years in the past. So the issue is with removal, it's much like a chess game to sort of get someone removed. And our Department of Justice has now decided they're going to play checkers to just sort of clear the board without following the rules. So this is an adherence of justice, and we should be very concerned about it, not just for this student, but for a number of students. There are over 300 students who've had their visas revoked. And foreign students are going to stop coming to the country, and that's $48 billion for the U.S. economy that will be removed if students stop coming here, foreign students stop paying full freight.
Clear the board without following the rules. That is exactly what is happening. Andrea Flores, Alan Orr, thank you both so much for your clarity, for your expertise.